Hello, everybody. How are you? Hope you're doing well. So, today we are going to discuss how to write a good thesis, dissertation, or final year project, or even an assignment. So, I'm Dr. Abdul Haq Sinachki. I'm from University of Abdul Rahman, Faculty of Business and Finance. So, the first we will start about how to write an effective introduction, or what we call chapter one. So first, you should know that chapter one consists of uh, mainly six sections. The first one is the introduction, or also we call it background of the study. Then we identify the problem of uh, the research problem or statement of the problem, also we call it. After that, we identify research questions, then objective of the study, then the significance of the study, and finally we define the keywords or the key constructs. So first we start with the introduction or the background of the study. Basically, for in the before we start the research, we should give a brief introduction, a brief description of the topic being studied. What is the scenario? Being studied. What is the phenomenon that you want to study? Uh, the most important is to highlight what motivates us actually to do this research. We start with a discussion with general ideas and we narrow them to the core of the thesis. Means that when we have a phenomenon, let's say for example we want to study poverty, then we may talk about poverty in general, you know, and of course if you want to study poverty there is uh, many other aspects of poverty. So maybe, for example, we talk about poverty in general in Malaysia, then we narrow that to a particular specific area. Could be vulnerable poor, or could be how, for example, government programs and policies affect poverty index or poverty rate. So from the general, we go and come to a specific. We may also even talk about poverty over the world. Then we narrow it to the Asian countries. Then specifically, we talk poverty on, for example, in Malaysia. In this way, the research territory will be well established. So the audience, they will understand to where you want to go, and what is the main idea that you want to investigate. So you may also, while explaining, or describing that phenomena, you may use previous empirical studies and or theories, concept to justify your ideas. Every argument that you argue, and especially when we do a research or when we do a scientific research, should be or must be justified. So those justification, we may find them in previous empirical studies or they published or from a theory or a concept. Even there also we may use some graph tables, or data to justify our argument. Also, you may identify the gaps and limitation of those previous studies and highlight that your study tries to fill up these gaps. When you study about the scenario, for example, you may say that poverty in Malaysia have been studied, many times. Many researchers have been, investigated, this phenomenon. But you may, based on the review that you have done, found that a particular area was neglected or was not really investigated, such as vulnerability to poverty, or such as social poverty, or whatever aspect of poverty you want to study. So you may highlight that gaps and limitation, and shows that this research or this study or your study is going to fill up this gap. So here in that case, you narrow again, the aim and the goal and objective of your study is become more measurable and achievable. So also you should highlight the motivation of the study. You may justify your argument, as I say, by using data such as tables, graph, and previous empirical studies to support your ideas. Actually, what motivates you to do the research? Why do you think that research is important? And why do you think we should solve that problem or that issue? That is the motivation. So you should identify any correlation, causes, and effect of the issue and discuss them in details while providing justification to support the need to conduct the study. So what are the correlation between the variables you are being studied, any cause and effect that you could notice from that? Why you have to justify any argument you address, because remember, always remember that you're doing a scientific research. Anything highlighted need to be justified with a robust and concrete evidences, such as previous published work, or such as theory or concept. So again, the issue of the study and the scenario and the motivation to do the research should be adequately and critically discussed in most 8 to 10 pages in this. You not necessarily, you could go sometimes until 20 pages, but to have a very adequate and a thorough discussion on the scenario, on the phenomenon, and describe that phenomenon, and highlight all the issues and the problems and the motivation that you need to study. So I think you need at least 8 pages to do it. So you should clearly state and highlight the solution for the main problem and issues discussed. After highlighting the problems and the issues, then you should highlight and propose a solution for that problems. I mean, while proposing problems for solution, not giving the solution per se, but showing that solving those problems will enhance, for example, the particular phenomenon, or the particular people that experiencing that phenomenon, and shows that how this study would solve those problems. So let me summarize it in 4 steps that what we have discussed now. First, start from general to specific. Always start your idea from general. Talk about the general things so that people understand the general ideas. Then keep narrowing it to reach the specific objective that you need to investigate. Second, motivation of the study should be highlighted. After you study the scenario and highlight the scenario from general to specific, now you should highlight what motivates you to do the research, why your research is important, and why do you think that we should solve that issues. Third, you should identify any correlation, causes, effect of the problem should be discussed. So in that case, you will give a very, very important overview so that audience will understand where the problem lies behind, or what caused the problem, and how the problem or the issues are intercorrelated among each other, and which one affect the others. And the last, fourth, proposition of solution to the problem should be provided. And here, after identifying the problem and showing how the problems are correlated and connected, then you should propose those problems for solution. Again, I emphasize, you do not give the solution per se, but you propose those problems and issues for solutions, to be investigated. Then after, if you really done a very critical discussion on the introduction part, on the background of the study, believe me, the statement of the problem will emerge itself. Actually, you don't need to write a problem statement, but it's already there. You just need to recap or recall, the problem statement and summarize it. But if your introduction or background of study, it was just, copy and paste or description or summarizing and reporting previous studies without any critical discussion, without any argument, then the statement of the problem would not easily be emerged, and sometimes it is impossible to highlight or to find that problem statement. So the problem statement is basically really depend on the quality of the discussion in chapter or in introduction in background of the study. So basically we have 5 steps here. The first step, you state the general problem or the issue being investigated from theoretical and practical point of view. What is the general issue? For example, we say that we want to study about poverty in Malaysia. What is the issue? You may say that, even though government really succeeded in alleviating poverty, from almost 50% in 70s to less than 5% in nowadays 2019 2020, but we still have pocket of poverty. So this is in general. So this need to be investigated from the practical point of view. Or you may also have an issue of the theoretical point of view, where you maybe you say that, or you found that previous theories or previous theoretical work does not really focus on a particular area. For example, vulnerability to poverty, how people move in and out, for example, of poverty, that in general. Then after that, second step is you need to highlight the specific issue or the problem and prove that this was not solved in previous research or previous empirical studies or theoretical studies. So here, now from the general, we go to a specific one, where exactly you want to study that vulnerability to poverty. You may, for example, highlight that child poverty or female poverty in Malaysia is specifically is not, really investigated, and that is a very worried phenomenon that increasing, and you show some data on that. So this is the specific problem, and you prove that it was not really previously done, or if it is done, at least it's not really well understood. So after doing that, now you are ready to highlight the gaps and limitations of previous studies and indicate that this study will fill up this gap or limitation. Previous studies, when they study, for example, poverty, they have done this and this and this, but they have not done this and this and this. This study comes, to fill up this gap. Then after demonstrate again how then this study would solve the issue or problem being investigated, and how and why the gap should be filled up. Of course, any issue or problem that identified, we should clearly state and demonstrate why it is important to solve it, why we are going to benefit by solving it. So this is what we have to explain. And the last one, you need to highlight and explain to whom this study is precious, and where it would be useful. I mean that, is it for policymakers only or for practitioners? Or you could, of course, highlight, because later we are going to talk about significance of the study, but it's a good idea to highlight why this study is important, to whom it is important. Of course, in the case of poverty, will be policymakers, will be practitioners, NGOs, could be even to individual households. So this all they could take, the result and the outcome of the study in order to improve the life, the well-being of household and people. Then you should know again, in the problem statement, or we call it the statement of the problem, should be first specific, clear, precise, and oriented. That's 4 things that you need to have them. You cannot have a problem statement which is general. Yes, we start with general as we say, but we must go and narrow it to a specific one and focus on that. When we say specific problem or issue, does not mean that it is simple. No, could be in complex, but it is narrowed to very precise area or precise context. So it should be very clear, straightforward, and oriented. It's not going to be vague or huge. And unlike in the introduction, you have to remember section, you do not need to provide sources or citation for every single statement that you propose in the problem statement. except if it is necessary. What I mean here, because if you remember, I say that when you discuss adequately and critically your background of the study, your problem statement will emerge. Actually, you already have a lot of citation and references and resources in your background of the study. Therefore, when you write a problem statement, should be only one page, to maybe maximum 2 pages, because it's already been discussed in background of the study, everything about the issue about motivation. So it is not really necessary for you to repeat and you have to recite those kind of research and articles. So you just need to discuss or highlight what it has been discussed in background of the study, and therefore no need for you to have a citation only if it is necessary. So you are going to define that. So also you have to note that uh, 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 in the introduction you talk about the gap too. So there is a difference between the two gaps in the statement of the problem and in the introduction. Usually in the introduction, when you talk about the gaps and the limitation are in a broader way. The gaps are very broad, so your study impossible to address all those gaps, but in the problem statement you are going to be very specified and clearly identify the specific gap that this study need to investigate. So again, in the background of the study you will have so many gaps in the broad area, but in the problem statement you are going to highlight only those gaps in a specific way and the gaps that the study really need to address them. So after completing your problem statement, then you come to the research question. Actually, research question is similar to problem statement, but some of the students basically confuse between problem statement or research problem and research question. Research problem is an issue or problem that is written in a paragraph, in a sentence. It could be a question, but the question does not written in question mark, written in a sentence or paragraph. But in a research question, you translate those problem statements or those issues to a question, to a research question. So you are going to ask questions which should be derived from the problem statement. Those questions should be directly related to your problem statement. You cannot ask questions that does not have any relationship with your problem statement. So as I say here, after developing the study problem, a statement provides a question that the study aims to answer. What you want to answer this study, that problem, how to tackle that problem. Of course, we have to ask so many questions. For example, we say that why still have some pocket of poverty in Malaysia. So one of the questions we will ask, do government programs really helping the poor or the female poor? One of the questions. Second question, is a female household or headed household, coping strategies are effective, to tackle the problem of poverty or their poverty, or do those families or female headed families really prepare before and after. I mean that do their risk management or risk reduction are effective in tackling their poverty or no, or they just wait until they experience a risk or shocks, then only they intervene. So this kind of the question, the problem statement just ask, want to solve the myth of why female or pocket of poverty still exists in Malaysia. But in the question that we ask about government policies, programs. We ask about females headed, family coping strategies, risk reduction, and risk management policies. We can ask other questions if the research need to answer those questions. So as I say, the sub question should be derived from the study problem statement. They should be written same as the purpose of the study, but in a form of questions. So I think now you understand what does mean about a set question. A set question, it must be in the form of question. And while the problem statement, it is a problem also. Could be it is a question or an inquiry, but it is not written in a question form rather than in a sentence or paragraph. So after that, when you already establish and highlight your question that the research need to be answered, then what is your objective? You need to highlight both the general and specific objective of the study. So the general objective captures the main aim and the idea of the study. For example, the objective of this study to investigate factors that affect female poverty, for example, that in general. Then you have a specific objective that should be precise and measurable. For example, one, to identify the impact of government policies on female poverty, to investigate the effect or the impact of coping strategies on female poverty, to discuss or to examine the impact of risk management strategies on female poverty. So specifically, you highlight those objectives. So also remember, research objective should describe concisely what the research is trying to achieve. You cannot discuss an objective or you provide or highlight or a research objective which is out of the study aim or the study goal or the study general objective. It must be all in that particular, area. They should also summarize the accomplishment a researcher wishes to achieve and provide direction to the study. Sometimes also research objective will give a direction to the study. Sometimes even as written, for example, to provide, for example, policies to policymaker in order to tackle poverty could be in that way. So after that, you may define the scope of the study. Means, define the capacity of your study in terms of time and resources, and in terms of which country or which individuals or groups you need your study is focused more to be investigated. In our case, for example, we want to study poverty. We say we want to study poverty from 1990 until 2019. The targeted group is female, for example. That is our scope. So you should provide a detailed description about the time allotted and the resources needed to conduct the study. Highlight the important things to consider before, while, and after the investigation is done. What we should consider before we start the research, and during the research, and after we get the outcome. So also you should justify the reasons for conducting the study and how to solve it. So this is, you may briefly describe on that in the scope of study, but to be precise here, focus on 2 or 3 things: the time and the group being investigated, or sample, or the population, and also the important things that you need to consider in this research. That 3, it must be really well described and identified in the scope of the study. And the last, or before the last, after we have significance of the study, and put it in a way why your study is important. What differs your study from others? That is what it means. So first, we have 2 parts. The first part, you may highlight the importance of the study, prove that your study is significant for maybe academia, policymakers, practitioners, to the field of the study. So in our case of poverty, that study important for policymakers because it will provide them or help them in design appropriate policies to tackle poverty. To practitioners like NGOs also to help them to target what is the most marginalized group that need a help, and to others, maybe even to the household. Or to the poor people, they may also know how to have a better and more effective and efficient coping strategies and risk management strategies, to tackle their poverty. So you should clearly answer the following question when you ask, when you highlight the signal of the study: how and why this study would be important. That it should be clearly being answered there in your significant study. Because if you cannot answer why and how your study is important, that means there is no importance of the study. If there is no importance of the study, then the first thing, why we should waste the time and the resources to conduct it. So it is not that feasible for that. So then after, you can also use previous identified research gaps in the background of this of the study, what you say, you can identify. And also sometimes after later when you do literature review, also you will find gaps and limitation and use them as a proof of your significance of the study. So means what I want to tell you here, significance of the study, sometimes you may wait until you do chapter 2, and sometimes maybe until you do conclusion, and see how your study could be different and contributed. So you may at the beginning highlight, what is important, but to get a very clear idea, I think at least this my perception, it's my way of doing research. I always I wait until I do literature review chapter 2, and therefore I identify more gaps and more limitation and see how my study could address those gaps and limitation. So this is a tips for the significance of the study. Also, you should identify and explain in details who the beneficiary, entities, as I say, like stakeholders are, and how they can gain advantage from the development of this study. I think that's just now I mentioned it also. How, for example, NGOs going to benefit from this study, or how policymakers going to benefit from this study, how household, and individual is going to benefit from the study, and how also academia in terms of research is going to benefit from this study. This all you need to also explain. Also explain how relevant the study to the issue problem being investigated and why it is important to conduct it. I think this is also already explained. Again, you need to show why it is this study is relevant to the issues or problem being investigated, or the trend, or the current scenario, what is happening. And the last is very important to show how your study is different from others. Could be, for example, your study provide maybe a value added to a theoretical understanding. Could be using a different theory to tackle the problem. Previous studies they use maybe theory A to investigate the problem of vulnerability to poverty, but those theories was applied maybe is not that well fit with the purpose. So maybe you provide other theories that can or merge 2 or 3 theories that can give a better explanation of the phenomenon. Maybe previous studies use methodologies that give a result, but is not that really well explained. So maybe you propose a new method, or you enhance an existing methodology or methods, to tackle the problem, or maybe you propose new variables, to also make a better understanding of the phenomenon, or maybe you propose a new measurement or new data. So this is all could be something that differ from others that or previous empirical studies, and your study have it. So after that, then we will have the last point where you give a definition of the key construct, or the variables that are going to be used. Key construct are the variables of the study. Define them theoretically and operationally, because that will help the readers to understand what do you mean exactly by poverty. If you don't define it, so people may understand it as a relative poverty. Compare, he's not poor, he has money to buy food, to buy clothes, to send children to school, but he still can see himself he's poor because his neighbor is super rich and he drive a Ferrari, but he just drive a normal car. So you have to define what is poverty you mean about it. So in your research, maybe you define poverty as poverty line income, means that a household of 4 people, let's say in Malaysia, who have 1,000 ringgit per month and below. So if someone have more than 1,000 ringgit per month for a family of 4, so we don't consider them as a poor. So this is what you need to do for all the variables being investigated. In order to write a theoretical definition, what you need to do is you need to review related studies and find out how actually they have defined the construct of the variables. Those studies, how they define it. Then, you review several theoretical definitions used in various related studies and explain how those constructs are defined in your research. Are you going to use exactly as previous research has defined redefine them, or are you going to adopt and adapt them or modify them to fit your context? Most of the time, maybe you adapt and adopt to fit your context, or maybe you can use them as they are. It would be called, in this case, an empirical definition, or rather than a theoretical definition. So after you do the definition of the key construct of the variable, you come to the end of chapter 1. So I can say congratulations, you have done a good job if you have really successfully and adequately critically discussed all the issues that been highlighted just now. So I wish you a good luck in your assignments, in your thesis, in your dissertation, in your final year project. If you still have any question, you can contact me via email, abdullah@utah.edu.my, or maybe even you can keep your comment below, the video, and I try as much as I can to answer your question. So I will see you in the next video, where we are going to talk to discuss about the chapter 2, which is literature review. Thank you very much, and see you soon.